Hi, everyone. I'm Kino. Thank you so much for coming. It's really my honor to present this fourth book of mine to you. So before we get started on the whole evening, I just want to kind of give you a roadmap of where we're going to go. I'd love to chat with you a little bit about what the Yogi assignment is, and then I thought we could join in a short meditation all together. And then if you have any questions, there'll probably be a little bit of time for some questions. And then, of course, I would be so honored to sign your book if you'd like that. Okay? Can you guys hear me okay? Yes? Okay, super. So the story of the Yogi assignment is really special. I have been a yoga teacher and have been practicing nearly every day for the last 20 years. Yoga's been in my life for about 22 years, which probably you're wondering how old I am when I say that, you know? Most people, when I say that, think, well, are you kidding? You know, did you start when you were 5? My very first class was when I was 19 years old, and the yoga practice didn't really take root for me until I started practicing what's called the tradition of Ashtanga yoga. And as I begin to practice more and share the tradition, the first thing that really became evident to me was that no one was talking about the inner experience of yoga. Everybody was really interested in the poses, but there was this thing that was happening, kind of like a global phenomenon, where people would get on their mats and sort of open their hearts and really transform their lives. And it was this thing that really didn't make sense to anyone who wasn't doing yoga, you know? How could doing a headstand make a difference in your world, you know? How could it be that just because you stood on your head that morning, you were a nicer person, your heart was more open, and you were able to make more peace in all of the conversations of your life? No one's really talking about how does this happen, because you could look into a headstand and see, well, you need to activate your deltoid. Well, you need to squeeze your pelvic floor, but where is the muscle that breaks your heart open? Where is the muscle that makes you cry when you get off of the mat and just makes you that slightly bit of a nicer person? No one could find it, and no one was really talking about it. So when I talked to all of the teachers of yoga and said, well, you know, have you ever experienced deep inner transformations, and how does this philosophy that's talked about kind of in an abstract sense, how does that become real in the practice? Where is there kind of a manual of how to take those lessons, those experiences off of your mat into your life? People sort of looked at me like, well, you just have to practice, you know? And if you know the Ashtanga yoga method, my teacher, Sri Patapi Joyce, his most famous saying is, do you guys know? Practice and all is coming. So if you see that as a hashtag on Instagram or on social media, it's my teacher who actually said that. But truthfully, my teacher's named Sri Patapi Joyce. If you look at traditional yoga text, this is pretty much all the traditional yoga texts say about everything. Just every question that's out there, just practice. And so that was the answer. Now, I don't know about you, but that wasn't really a suitable answer for me. I wanted something concrete that sort of said, practice in this way, think about this, do this specifically. Here is how you feel in headstand, and here is how you're going to take that off of your mat and into your life. Well, this was on my mind, and it's really been a passion of mine always to, as I like to say, take the lessons of your yoga into your everyday life. Well, as I was sharing on social media and also teaching in person and also a little bit online, I started using, and this is going to sound a little bit crazy, but I started using a video app called Snapchat. I don't know if you guys ever have tried Snapchat. I really didn't understand it. I'm not one of these people that like just shares randomly throughout the day. It actually makes me moderately uncomfortable to like put out a post saying I'm having a chai. I feel like that that doesn't enhance the world in any way. And I realized when I was pulling up my phone and trying to share something, I remember saying to everyone who was watching, hey guys, I don't really know what to say to you. I don't really want to tell you that I just took a shower. I don't really think you need to know that. And I'm not sending a video of that either. So I said, well, I'm a teacher. I've been a yoga teacher now for a long time, and teachers give assignments. So guys, here's your yogi assignment of the day. And I just started organically giving out these assignments. And I think the first assignment that I gave was Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, because I felt like I don't know where you are in the journey, but this is something really important. So for today, every time you feel that you're an expert, just pause for a moment and reconsider that paradigm. See how you can renew that beginner's mind. Remember that first class that you went into when you truly knew nothing. Those of you guys who practiced, you want to just take a moment and actually think about that. Your first yoga class, right? My first yoga class was in a gym, and I didn't know what I was getting into. All I knew for me was that I wanted to stand on my head because I saw that the day before. Unfortunately, I did not check the class schedule, and I walked into a class where you lie down for the entire time. So this was a bummer. It took me about a year to actually stand on my head when I first started practicing. But that first yoga class left an impression in me. It left me feeling like I knew nothing, actually, you know? And this is that epitome of the beginner's mind. Well, I started doing that every day and giving these yogi assignments. And one of the most powerful yogi assignments that I gave, and it's actually in the book as well, is the yogi assignment in Sanskrit called kshama, or forgiveness. And this is something that is so overpoweringly difficult. If you have been harmed, if you have suffered trauma, if your heart has been broken, to forgive, if you have lost, if you have been wronged, is so difficult. If you've been a victim of physical or sexual abuse, it is so totally heartbreaking to think about forgiving those who have wronged you. If you're in a fight with a friend or family member, and for any of you who have been through that, or you know someone who's going through that, if you're in a fight with someone you love, it is devastating. Well, I posted about forgiveness primarily because, well, there was someone that I needed to forgive. And I wanted to take that lesson of how I learned how to forgive myself for my imperfections. Because when I got onto my mat, I realized, hey, this body that I have, it's perfect. It's not perfect in the sort of, you know, cover girl sense, like I'm never going to be on the cover of Vogue magazine, 6 feet tall. That would take a lot of plastic surgery, and I'm not interested in that. But I realized this body is perfect for my awakening, for my consciousness, for me. And I began to forgive myself for not fitting into the right size jeans, for not being in the cool enough club, for not having as much success as I wanted to, just for all those things that I used to beat myself up about. And I realized that if I could experience that through the practice, I could apply that to other people. So if I could forgive myself, I could forgive them too. I remember posting about that, and that people's responses were overwhelming. I got a message from someone, from a mom, who wrote to me and said, I've been mad at my daughter for 20 years, and I decided today, because of your post, I'm going to reach out to her and I'm going to forgive her. And I just started to cry, because I felt like that's change in the world. Like all the crazy stuff we read in the news, if a mom forgives her daughter for something, who knows what they were arguing about. If a best friend forgives a best friend, if a sibling forgives another sibling, forgive your sister or your brother for something that happened. This makes the world a better place. Your world, regardless of the crazy that's happening out there, your world, your circle of love, your circle of closeness, your circle of home. And then this inspired me to keep giving them. And then people started leaving me comments like, where can I find these yogi assignments? I want to go back and read them. Where can I find them? And I thought, I don't know, search the hashtag, you know, and like try to bookmark them. I know this was before Instagram made bookmarks. So I started to write the yogi assignments on Instagram so people could search them. And then I have an amazing publisher, which I've written 2 Ashtanga yoga books, and I was talking to my publisher and I said, I've got a crazy idea that kind of popped up on social media. And you know, I don't know if that's the greatest book pitch I would ever recommend, but that's what I said. I said, I've been giving these yogi assignments and people are really posting them, and they're kind of taking a life of their own. And there's nothing really like this out there that really talks about how to make the inner experience of yoga accessible to everyone. I remember reading Pema Chodron's books, and she's an amazing Tibetan Buddhist teacher. If you've never read her books, I strongly and highly recommend them. They also happen to be published by Shambhala, not an advertisement. Didn't pay me to say that. But I've always loved Pema Chodron's books. One of the things I loved about her books, the first one I read is called When Things Fall Apart. And what I loved about that book is it made the essential teachings of Buddhism accessible and relatable to everyone. Like I could give that book to my mom, who's never meditated more than 5 minutes, of which I tried to teach her, which were miserable. So my mom sat there after my first meditation retreat and she said, you look different. Will you teach me? And I said, sure, Mom, that would be amazing. So my mom closed her eyes, and then within 20 seconds, my mom tapped me and said, is it over yet? And I said, no, Mom, it's been about 20 seconds. Look at the timer. And she said, oh. Another minute went by. She tapped me and said, is it over now? And I said, Mom, I love you. I'm not your meditation teacher. So that was the epitome of my mom's meditation journey. She still says to me, one day when I'm older, I'm going to try that again. And I thought, okay, not with me. So a long story short, Pema Chodron's books were something that I wanted to emulate in the world of yoga. I wanted to take this kind of quintessence of the yoga wisdom and begin to make it accessible for people that maybe have never even stepped on a mat, but maybe just seen the poses, and help really translate that ability to forgive yourself, to love yourself, to see yourself and experience yourself as whole and complete, and the ability to understand mental, physical, and spiritual strength, and make that accessible to anyone who would be willing to read a little bit. And so this is kind of a long-term dream of mine that's really come true in the Yogi assignment. I don't think by any means that this book is all of the pearls of the yoga wisdom. I hope to write a few more books in the future. And I do hope that it's a first step in that inner tradition, which so many yoga practitioners feel, but lack the words to really put their finger on and really express. And I hope for those of you who are here tonight that you take a little bit of the pearls of yoga wisdom and you'll refer to this book in moments of doubt along the path, and it will re-inspire you not just to do the physical practice, but really to live that full inner spiritual journey. So that's the Yogi assignment story. I'd love to do a short meditation with you guys before we take some questions. How does that sound? That sound right? I don't feel comfortable leading a meditation from a podium. So maybe I can, can I have a chair? I think that I just want to, unless I'm going to like do walking meditation. Can I do it without the microphone? Will you still hear me? I'll just sit here and I'll go back to the microphone for questions. Go back to my official place. Welcome to laugh at anything I say. I tend to make very strange jokes. So, normally not when I'm meditating though. So, let's see. If you can't sit cross-legged on the chair, if that's not comfortable for you, if you happen to be in a dress and you don't want to show anyone your underwear, then what I recommend that you do is you take your feet, place them on the floor, scoot forward to the front of your chair, okay? Knees together, and then just pivot your pelvis a little bit forward so that you can kind of roll your hip joints, roll into the hip joints. And you want to feel, if you're doing the chair meditation, that your back expresses its natural lumbar curve. Make sense? So chair meditation is not slouch meditation. Okay, so you still want to feel that natural lumbar curve. If possible, knees together and just hands rest on your knees. If you're comfortable sitting in a cross-legged position in a chair, you can go ahead and cross your legs. That's what I'm going to do. Okay? Your choice. Let your eyes come to a comfortable closed position and your body rests for a moment. The beginning of every practice, the beginning of our journey is always to direct the mind into the state of nirodha, the state of stillness. From whatever experience you've had throughout the day, bring your mind into presence now. And do that through the sensory capacity of the physical body. Tune into your body by bringing your mind into attention of the various sensations. Perhaps you feel tiredness in your legs. Perhaps you feel excitement in your heart. Perhaps you feel weariness. Whatever emotion, whatever sensations arise, let them arise and let them feel as they are. Perhaps you become aware of your breath, moving in and out of the body. And perhaps your hearing transforms into a pointed hearing, into a global hearing, where you're simultaneously aware of all the sounds in the environment, and at the same time aware of the subtle sensations in your own body. And then, with a calm, directed, equanimous mind, free from judgment, bring your attention into the spiritual heart, the space behind the sternum, and for a moment, simply feel this inner space. You might become aware of your heartbeats, You might become aware of the breath moving in and out through the chest. You might become aware of the feeling of your clothes, or you might become aware of the feeling of a tender achiness, a vulnerability. Perhaps there is a voice in your heart which yearns to speak to you, a place of sanctuary and light and love. The seat of Nirodha, the state of stillness, lies in the innermost chambers of the spiritual heart, a sanctuary of spirit, a home of light. Direct your mind here within yourself. The seat of your power, your presence lies here. The seat of your wholeness, as you have been created, whole in the spirit, lies here. The seat of healing, as though your soul, your body, your mind can drink from an inexhaustible source, lies down in the innermost chamber of the spiritual heart. It is here where your embodied presence brings you into full aliveness, where everything that you feel is real. In the spiritual heart lies true compassion, feeling everything that arises without any judgment. Whether as you tune in you feel anger or sadness, whether as you tune in you feel lightness and grace. In the quiet space of equanimity, the spiritual heart is a sanctuary, a safe space that allows you to feel everything. The brokenheartedness, the wholeness, the completion, the elation, the joy, everything. The beginning of every journey is the intention to walk in stillness and allow that stillness deep in the innermost sanctuary of the spiritual heart to become the rock and the foundation of every moment of your life. Gently bring your hands together at the center of the chest, letting your thumbs be in close proximity to your sternum. Feel your heartbeat on the fingertips, almost as though there's a warm presence, almost like a flower bud between the hands. And then allow yourself a conscious breath in as though you're breathing through the heart center itself, opening up the resonance and the vibration of the body. Exhale the sound Om together. Namaste. Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Maybe I can stand up here. Well, thank you for joining the meditation with me. I think one of the things that is really powerful, I believe, of tuning into kind of what I like to call the spiritual heart is the seed of worthiness. And there's a word in Sanskrit called Purusha, which means spirit. And the idea in yoga is that every every being has a spark of the spirit within them, and that spark of the spirit has been created whole and perfect and is totally and completely worthy of everything, of success, of love, of happiness. And to tune into that in the space of the spiritual heart is a window into freedom, a window into wholeness, and is really like a sanctuary. So I hope you take a little bit of a piece of that and return in difficult moments in your life. And as little as 5 minutes, you can take a moment and tune in and kind of let that become your reality rather than whatever craziness may be around. So lately there seems to be a lot of craziness. Yeah. So I wanted to leave a little bit of time for some questions. I don't know if any of you have had a chance to flip through my book, or if you have any questions even just about me or my journey, I'd be happy to answer. Are we shy? We're shy in New York. I can't believe it. You have a question? Yeah. Thank you.
About Stars, and I subscribe to it, so thank you. I was just wondering how it came to be and how you choose the teachers, instructors.
Fantastic. Thank you for that. I didn't pay him to ask about my new online channel, but thank you. Thank you for subscribing. I really appreciate that. Thank you to anyone who's here as a subscriber. I really, really appreciate that. So first, the idea of Stars came kind of in twofold. First, I had been making some videos for some other online channels. People had asked me to make videos, and I was sitting in Copenhagen in the summer. My husband is Danish, and we go over to Denmark in the summer almost every year. We have for the last 14 or 15 years, which is really special. I still don't speak very good Danish, but if you ever heard the language, you'll understand and you'll forgive me. So I remember sitting there in our apartment that we'd rented in the summer. I was reading the New York Times, which I tend to do kind of obsessively and habitually, and I got to this sort of lifestyle piece about, and you'll laugh at this, the country of Fiji. Always wanted to go to Fiji, so every time I see it, I was like, oh, Fiji, let's read about Fiji. But it wasn't about the island of Fiji. It was about the channel, Fiji TV. I was like, they have a channel? What is this? And apparently Fiji has a TV channel, which is just an online TV channel that allows you to watch the beach 24 hours a day. So it's just, you pay to be able to live stream the beach of Fiji 24 hours a day. And they said there are a lot of people that subscribe to this and just like to have it on their desktop, just there as like a place for their mind to go. So like doing annoying work, Fiji. Right. And then I was reading another article, like sort of like, you know, in the bottom is a suggested article. So I went and clicked on another one, and it said that there was a whole preponderance of these individual streaming sites that basically people left open on their desktop just because it made them feel good. And another really big one was eagles nesting. So it was like an eagle cam. So that people would just leave they just left the eagles there all day, you know, taking up a little bandwidth probably from their company, you know, in a very benign way. And then whenever something was annoying, they would just check on the eagles. And I thought, if there's Eagle TV and there's Fiji TV, why not Yoga TV? Like yoga could just be there happening in the background and also serve as like something really nice for people. Oh, look, there's headstand. I feel better now. And then go back to work. And I thought, I've got to do this. So then first my husband, I have so many ideas that I tell them to my husband. He's like, oh, are we going to do this now? We're not going to do the yoga center anymore? Okay. All right, sweetheart. Let's see how that, so I told him, okay, we're going to make a yoga TV channel. And he was like, okay, well, what's that going to look like? We talked about it, and we come up with all these show ideas and class ideas. I always wanted there to be classes. And then I took the idea and I pitched it to everyone that would listen, that I thought would listen. I had an agent that took me around, and I took the idea to Universal Studios, and I took the idea to Lionsgate and all like the big production. It was like, we have some like yoga TV channel, it'd be really cool. And there's like there's Animal Planet. I had this whole pitch, you know, before there was Animal Planet, there were millions of people who loved animals and they had nothing to watch. And there are now millions of people who do yoga and they have nothing to watch. We should make a yoga TV channel. And they were like, meh. No, we shouldn't. And I was like, oh. And then I pitched the idea to all the online places that I'd made videos before. And then they were like, no, we don't believe in it. No, no one wants to watch this. And then this really weird thing happened where people started to say, no one wants to watch yoga. It's boring. And I was like, have you been to class? And I thought yoga's not, but I thought, I know it's not boring. And I know that the yogi community is filled with sort of ups and downs. And I thought this is really possible. Just no one really believes in it but me. And so, I talked about it with many people. And the only person who was really willing to go down the rabbit hole with me was my friend Carrie. And then we started talking about it. And, we decided to put out this Kickstarter because we had started it so many times. Like we had a first Universal Studios was interested, and then they said no. And then a British production company was interested, and then they started to film with us. And then Brexit happened, so they canceled everything. I mean, what are the odds? Then we had another Finnish company that was interested, and then they took our money and didn't build the website. And so we were like, oh my God, we keep fighting for it. Let's do a Kickstarter. And thanks to everyone who backed us on Kickstarter, we were able to launch the project. And so this is sort of the birth of what I like to call the world's first yoga TV channel, because there are a lot of online channels out there that provide classes, but long term, not now, the 10-year vision of OmStars is to really be a yoga TV channel where we offer fun, watchable content that really showcases everything about the yoga life, so that you would come and practice at OmStars and get to meet your teachers that are on there, but at the same time, you'll be able to watch them in them and other yogis in lifestyle situations where you can really identify with, hey, I'm a yogi and I'm living in this world. What does that look like? What does that feel like? What are my struggles like? So this is kind of what we're about. The short answer to how we choose the teachers is I want everyone who is a teacher at OmStars to be steeped in tradition. I really value humility in terms of teachers. I really appreciate respect for the ancient tradition of yoga. So I like to invite teachers that have put in the work, have experienced personal spiritual transformation, and respect the lineage of yoga. And this is really important for us. We're not really interested in the flashiest people on social media. We're interested in real quality teachers that have submitted themselves into the practice because they've put in the work. It's one thing to be able to take beautiful pictures. It's sort of like now as a yoga teacher, you have to be able to take beautiful pictures, but there is something to be said for the person who's just getting on their mat every day and they're traveling back and forth to meet their teacher, whether that's in India or somewhere else, and they're putting in the work of being a student. That person, once they've gone through the journey, they have something really powerful and unique to share. So we're trying to find people with really, really empowering stories and experiences like that, and then giving them a platform really to share their message in that way. Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
So, I read a lot of your stuff online, and you always talk about your struggles and how about your the journey, the struggles, and I don't want to say inferior, but that you have your challenges.
Absolutely.
And I have practiced next to you in Mysore and behind you. I've been at Miami Life Center, and 2 years ago at Eddie's, you were next to me in class. It was in July 2 years ago. And I always say, oh my God, like I don't know if you remember, 2 years ago at Eddie's, you put your mat next to me, you were practicing.
I think I do remember that.
Could you please not put your mat next to me? Because it's too intimidating. So I wonder, where does... I can't imagine that you feel that you have struggles. It seems like you're so beyond.
No, I mean, well, thank you for seeing that in me. But the only thing that I can, really say is that I wish you were there in my first class. I mean, I was like the disaster girl. I barely made it through. I couldn't, first of all, I was never on a sports team. I was never a dancer. I was never a gymnast. I was never particularly athletic or physical before yoga. So my very first class, I walked into my very first Ashtanga class. The gym class was chill. Like they were, it's a gym class. They're kind of like, it has to be sort of accessible for everyone. My first primary series Ashtanga yoga class, my first Ashtanga class was full primary series. Which, if you ever practice Ashtanga, that's not a recommended first class. Actually, because of that, in our yoga center in Miami, we created like 1 hour intro classes where we're like, "Welcome to yoga. Take your socks off." It's a question we get all the time in our yoga center. Hi, can I wear socks? And I'm like, no. Cannot wear socks. It's Miami. It's gross. Take those socks off. You're gonna sweat in your socks in Miami. Off. So Anyhow, on my very first class, no socks, right? I walked in and I remember like the first chaturanga, like I didn't know it was chaturanga. I was like, oh my God, it's a push-up. Like, but luckily it was only a push down. You have to go down, not up. But I couldn't even do that. I belly flopped for every single chaturanga the first class. It was a disaster. And I remember like looking around and people were like, boom, boom, up dog, down dog. I'm thinking, oh my gosh. When it came to jump through, like that was so humbling. People like flying through, you know, and I'm thinking like, how am I gonna? I just like sat down and just sort of stared for the first couple of them and just thought. And I even did that. Like, I don't know if you ever seen anyone when they're jumping back and jumping through, they kind of do that side saddle thing.
Yeah.
I totally did that on my first class. And it's just basically you're at that moment putting out fires in the practice. So this lasted for a good while, and I kept on falling and falling and falling and tumbling at every moment. And I can tell you that still to this day, I get on my mat and there are things that I can't do. I face it every day. And there are things that I feel that I don't do well. And maybe I have low self-esteem. I don't know. But I come in and I just think, you know, and I can see I can't, like, you know, every time I face something, I'm sitting there and I'm putting in the work. So my attention is always about putting in the work. Putting in the work. And I don't ever really feel like I've arrived. Oh, I do this pose well. I actually don't feel like that, because when I'm practicing, I'm thinking, you know, I'm thinking about the inner experience, the inner journey, and the pose, and my body's always shifting and changing. And that in and of itself is a challenge. So I never really even feel like graceful or I feel like I'm doing, you know, amazing asana. I just feel like I'm on my mat and putting in the work. Sometimes my leg feels tight. Sometimes my leg doesn't feel tight. Sometimes I feel like I'm light. Sometimes I feel like I'm heavy. What I've learned over 20 years is not to give priority to how that feels, but to give priority to the fact that I'm on my mat and to celebrate that. So if you see, there are days that I definitely struggle. And this is, you know, the interesting thing about that is there are times, this is why I started to broadcast my practice sometimes and do live social media broadcasts of my practice, because people would say to me something like, oh, I see your Instagram post and it's always perfect. Like it's edited perfect. I'm like, fine. Okay, here, watch me practice. No makeup. I'm going to grunt. You're going to see me fall out of things and work and this. And I really like that, because I feel like, hey, this is me. I'm working. I'm sweaty. I'm a hot mess and I'm still on my mat. I'm tired and I don't want to be there, but I'm there. So, you know, the struggle is very real for me. Absolutely. And what I love about Ashtanga is that as soon as you have, there's like 6 series. We haven't even seen the 6 series. Like, I mean, you know, Sharat, who's Guruji's grandson, like nobody, it's like a myth, the 6 series, you know, it's like, he doesn't talk about it. You don't get to see, you never, like 5th series, we've seen some poses from, but 6th series is like, you know, I think it's just there so that you never get there, you know, I don't know, you know, and, so I think that as soon as you feel like comfortable in something in Ashtanga, that's the time you get a new pose. So as soon as you feel like, oh, primary series, yay, then you start second series. As soon as second series is relaxing, then you get the 3rd series. If that's never relaxing, but in case you're bored, then there's 4th series. If 4th series doesn't completely make you broken, then I guess there's 5th series, you know? So there's always another pose. There's always a new challenge. And then once you get those more advanced poses, you really go back and see that all those challenges were available right from the basics, right from the standing poses.
But what I think is also really good about Ashtanga teaches, it keeps you humble, because even for series poses like doing Uttita, Parangustasana.
That's hard.
Well, it's by now it's become pretty easy for me, but I have moments when I notice, and that's when you notice how nervous you are or something going on internally, because I lost it the other day. It just, my leg flopped and you know, and it's a pose that I normally can do. Yeah. And so, and there are other things, you know, that you normally can do, and then all of a sudden it's like, you know, it's just not happening.
One day it happens, one day it doesn't happen.
Yeah, and then other things that you think, I'll never ever be able to do that. And that's what I like about Ashtanga, that Sharat said to me the other day, I was so embarrassed. He said, don't ask me any questions, because I asked a question. And they always tell you don't ask questions. Eddie also says don't ask questions. And so
only
you just
ask
get
questions at the allotted time.
Yeah.
You know?
So you just get on your mat every day and do it and do it and do it. And then, like, for instance, the first time when I did Kurmasana totally by myself, you know, Supta Kurmasana. And I could not believe it.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
So just practice, practice. Just get, like you're saying, just get on your mat, do
Yeah.
the work.
Absolutely. And it's very much, I mean, that's very much real. The struggle of the practice
Yeah.
is very much real for me every
Yeah.
day.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. You have a question? Yeah.
What would you recommend to a student who just fell in love with the practice because they were inspired by you, but don't have necessarily the flexibility to go into a school where that's how my practice started? So I kind of practice at home. I practice with your app for a while, and then I went to Eddie's studio when I can. And you know, I have Mark, who also sometimes guides me. But when you get to a practice where I've been doing it for about a year and a half, you know, and you go through a moment where you start to realize where I know maybe you're a little more flexible, and then you had to build strength. And this is something I've learned from just, you know, watching and reading and you know, trying to see your journey. What would you recommend to someone who's super strong, where strength comes easily, but flexibility is not something that comes to me? And so where I would be in asana where I'm trying to get into it, and I just feel like I'm in a cave, and you know, and I just don't know how to release. And where you're in karmasana, you need help, you know, someone to like come in and assist you, and you don't have that. What would you recommend to someone who has a home practice?
Really good question. I think the first thing is to pause and really commend yourself for doing the home practice. So that's awesome. So yay. I really want to commend you for that. That's really awesome. Not everybody can do that and keep a discipline in that way. So that's really a testament to your own strength. So first recognize that you're doing everything right. You're not doing anything wrong. Everything's good. Right? The second thing is that with flexibility, just like with strength, there's going to be a process, like a time process that's going to happen. The process of opening, just like the process of building strength, is unique for everyone, and it's like a flower blooming, so we can't rush that process. Sometimes it's going to happen really quickly. Some flowers bloom like overnight. Others take, you know, a whole season, and so we don't know how long that season is. Every body is different, like every flower is different. So what we have to do is practice with surrender, practice with grace, not force. And this is really important with flexibility. So this is why when we're practicing, we tap on the door of the body gently as we're waking up a sleeping friend. And if they don't answer, we don't get mad at them and blow up the room, right? We just let them sleep. I guess they need to sleep a little bit longer. You go out and you check on your flowers. Hey, are they blooming today? No, they're not. You don't rip them out, you know, and yell at them or force them, try to pry open the bud, you know, otherwise you destroy it. So it's just the practice is just knocking on the door. Hey, how's it going? And the journey of flexibility is learning to speak what I like to call the language of the inner body. And so what this means is you'll go in with an equanimous mind. And the equanimous mind is neither for or against. So you have to be totally prepared to accept whatever happens. So you go in and you say, today my hip is tight. You do not try to open your hip. You simply observe, my hip is tight, and this is how far I can go. I take 5 breaths, I move on. And this will happen for people that are tighter. It also happens during injury recovery or recuperation, because if you've been injured, you come back, and particularly people who've been flexible or been strong, once they get an injury and they come back and they're like, why am I not better yet? I used to do this, now I do this. And it's a sense of loss and mourning and frustration. So it's the same pattern of learning to practice equanimity. This is my hip and this is how open it is today. I would like it to be more open. I observe frustration and I practice forgiveness. And then you take 5 breaths and you move on. And you don't try to solve it. And in the space of surrender, practicing surrender, that act in and of itself is really enough.
Thank you, Kino.
Thank you. And of course, go to class. Get Eddie to put you in Supta Karmasana every chance you get. One more? Yeah.
Hi, Kino. What would you recommend for someone who wants to start incorporating your strength drills? Like, would we do it before our practice or after? or?
That's a good question. Okay, so I do these things which I call yoga drills, and they're like my favorite things to do, because when I was starting the practice, I wanted to like isolate something physically, and a lot of like I would go see a physical therapist, and I would pester people in like sort of in Pilates and in anatomy and just everyone, and I would primarily anybody who could do a pose, I would kind of harass them. How do you do this? Are you activating this muscle, that muscle? Please don't tell me mula bandha, and then I would just ask all these questions. And so I would go to the physical therapist and work on things. Well, why does my wrist hurt when I go like this? And then she would tell me, oh, it's because you have this muscle is firing in some weird way. Do this little exercise. Okay. And so I would start to do these. And I always do whatever yoga drills I do before my practice. And I like to make it no more than 20 minutes, otherwise I'm exhausted. 5 to 20 minutes, and I try to make it be either like a drill or therapy, depending on what I'm working on. And I like to have it be a set program, so I do it every day for between 3 and 6 months, and then I reevaluate. Okay. So for a while I had a wrist injury. And my left hand, I had de Quervain syndrome, and it was nasty. There's no real there's Western medicine has no treatment for it except like steroid shots, which is not really a treatment, but just a Band-Aid. And then they can like remove some part of the tendon, which is also not a solution. So there's no treatment for it in Western medicine. And I did a combination of acupuncture and energy healing and really grace healing. And at the same time, I did a lot of physical therapy. And so the physical therapy exercise I would do, that became my yoga drills, because I wasn't really able to bear weight on my hand during that time. 5 to 20 minutes, something that's specific for you, that's going to help you in the poses that you're stuck on. The yoga drills doesn't have to be strength. It could also be flexibility. So like if you're working on back bends and your back bends are stiff, you could like lie over a yoga block or lie over a yoga wheel for 5-10 minutes, and then that's your yoga drill. Doesn't always have to be strength. Make sense? Something specific that's going to help you out where you're stuck in your practice. I like before. You can also do after, but the thing with after is sometimes after never happens. You know what I mean? You're done and you're like, I'm done. I'm not looking at the mat again. The only time I find after really works is if you're like on yoga retreat or you're in India and you have nothing else to do and you're bored out of your mind and you're staring at the wall and you're like, the internet is down, the power is out, I can't drink any more coconuts, I cannot drink any more chai. What should I do? Let's do some planks. So that's pretty much the only time after works. Yeah, super. One more question? You in the back? Sure.
The headstand, you're very interested in why you carry off the mat a different relationship to people. Yeah. Could you speak a little to that? I haven't read the book yet, so you've probably answered in that, but how the poses affect your relationships to people.
So let's talk about that within headstand, and thank you for asking. So the person I was before I tried to do a headstand was, I know how I felt. So I went up and I tried to do the headstand. I remember the first thing that happened was I toppled over. First time I tried by myself, I just went up and I toppled over. And then I remember this feeling of overwhelming self-pity. Poor me, look at me. No one caught me. I'm just lying here now. It was awful. Why wasn't anyone there to catch me? I'll probably never do it. There's other people. Look at them all. They're all on their heads. What about me? This is terrible. I think I'll just lie down. And so that was the voice was talking. And I had another voice, Kino, that's ridiculous. Pick yourself back up, put your elbows on the ground, and try again. But it's not going to happen. Why should I try? So I just sort of had this voice of overwhelming self-pity and a little bit of a sense of entitlement, as though if I didn't do it on the first try, it was never going to happen. But then, as you know, I sat there, and then the other voice was like, girl, pick yourself up, try again. All right. Okay. And I did it, and it didn't happen. I fell over again. And that little self-pity voice said, see, I told you. You're just going to fall. Now what? The other voice said, get back up and try again. And that happened about somewhere between 5 and 10 times on my first try in headstand. And I realized that day that I didn't master the headstand, but I began to change the tide in the battle of my mind, so that the fabric of my mind started to change. Because the person that I was when I fell over and something didn't go my way, and I felt self-pity, and I felt a sense of loss and a sense of, well, it should be happening, but it's not. That person was mad at the world, and she blamed everyone for her problems and why she wasn't successful. And she felt that the world owed her something. but she was mad at the world because it wasn't delivering. But the person who got back up and tried again, what she said is, I'm willing to work for my dreams no matter how long it takes. I believe in myself, even if no one else believes in me. And I will stand up for that for the rest of my life if I have to. And that made me a better person. Yeah. Yeah, sure. Well,
on the path to enlightenment, so to speak.
Well, there's a chapter in the book called Yoga Sangha, which is yoga friends. And it's really, really important to surround yourself with like-minded people, because it's really difficult. And I lived, before I started yoga, I lived a crazy life of partying. Like I was like professionally partying, I would say. That's like the main thing I did. I was also in school, but like my real job was partying. I spent the majority of my hours on the dance floor. And when I started doing yoga, like I went through this immense mourning process because I realized I just like can't hang out with all these people anymore. Not that I don't like them, like they're great. I love them, still love them. Occasionally I see some of them. Some of them are still partying, and some of them are not, right? So I remember going through this sense of loss of like, I'm not that person anymore. Okay, and so. And I feel like when you start the practice, one of the things that when I started practicing at 6 days a week, Ashtanga Yoga Mysore style, it was in New York City. And one of the things was amazing was that when I walked into the room, people were friendly after. You know, they would say like, oh, where are you from? You're new. You know, and I'd be like, oh, I'm from Florida. I just moved here. You do yoga too? And they, you know, and then they would say, you want to go get a juice? Ooh, okay. You know, and then so I would talk to them and people, oh, I went to India last year. Oh, you did cool. You know, and then it was just seeming, and then, you know, what ends up happening is that then if you're around people that are on the path, then when you get that headstand for the first time, you can send someone a text, hey, I get headstand for the first time. Then they send you a text back, oh my God, that's so awesome. If you send that to like your mom, she's like, why are you balancing on your head? You know what I mean? Is that really good for you? I remember my dad I got to get my dad to help me in a yoga pose once. It was not a good idea. That's actually what he said to me. Sweetheart, that looks a little extreme. I'm like, Dad's not helping. It already hurts. Just stand there. I'm just shh. It didn't work out. He kept on, yeah. So that was the last time I asked him for help. So it's really important you have someone to kind of commiserate with and someone that understands. When you start doing yoga, the time you wake up changes in the morning. Suddenly, like it's 8 p.m. and your non-yoga friends are like, let's go out for wine and drinks, and you're like, yeah, I've got to do yoga tomorrow morning at the 7. I did the wine. You're very nice and attractive and all, but how about some chamomile tea? You know, and they're looking at you like, you want to drink tea? And do what? Like talk and stare at each other? Well, yeah, that'd be nice. You know? And so you kind of need another yogi to be like, sure, I'll go put the kettle on, right? And if you don't have that, then it can be very lonely. The spiritual path is already solitary. Even though you have friends along the path that can share the journey, it is still a solitary practice. So it's just really important to surround yourself with people that understand where you are, and at the same time, recognize that not all yogis are perfect. So just because someone's doing yoga doesn't mean that they're spiritually enlightened or necessarily at a high vibration, right? We're all, the whole world could practice yoga. We'd be at different steps along the spiritual journey. So it's very important to even within the yoga world, be around people that are lifting you up, be around people that are not competitive with you. If there's like a competitive spirit in someone's heart, they're never really going to be your friend. They're not going to celebrate. They're going to be constantly competing with you. So it's really important to surround yourself with people that see you for who you are and lift you up for who you are. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks. Okay. Well, guys, I want to thank you for coming out this evening. If you had any other individual questions that you didn't get a chance to ask, I'd be happy to sign your book. And if you want to chat with me for a little bit, I'd be happy to. Okay. And if you want to take a picture, that's cool too. Okay. Thank you.